Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the grey. Today's video, we're going to talk about a Warhammer fantasy tournament that I went to, and, well, I use the words tournament loosely. This was the first games day to try and build a community in our local area. It was organised as a tournament. We had, wins and losses, Swiss pairing and all that sort of stuff. But there weren't too many people, I think we had 6 players rock up in total, but we have 6 different armies rock up, and it was an absolute blast. I mean, it's good to see that Warhammer Fantasy still lives in my local area. We had a ton of fun. I had a ton of fun playing in this event, so we're going to talk about the armies that were there. We'll talk about the meta, we'll talk about my games and how we played, and then what I thought and how I thought everything went. This should hopefully lead on to some Warhammer Fantasy content for you in 2022 for the channel, as we'll be getting some battle reports and all that sort of stuff for the forces of the game on the channel, hopefully very, very soon. I'm really excited. Had a ton of fun at the event. And a massive shout out to, first of all, Simon for running it, and to the Hobby Matrix, one of my local game stores, for hosting the event. With that said, first of all, we'll go check out the meta and what little meta there was for the event, and then we'll check out my list, and then we'll go through my games. And so here's a little breakdown of the event. First of all, we were playing at 2,000 points, and we had a 375 point cap on any unit. This means no unit could go above this cost, but this didn't include heroes that would join a unit. So you could have a 375 point unit and then stick a 375 point character inside said unit, but you couldn't have a unit that was more, or a character that cost more. This was just to stop, Death Stars, and make the event fun, and stop some of the big issues with that in the game. Scenario-wise, we had 3 rounds. The first one was Battleline, which is pretty much just a pitch sort of battle. Army set up either side, and you go and fight. Dawn attack, your army arrives sort of staggered across the parts of the board as your army doesn't arrive all together, and the Battle for the Past is played long ways across the table, with no reserves allowed to come on from the flanks. The field-wise, we had 6 different armies, which was really fun, which meant everyone got to play something very different. There was a Dark Elf army, Ogre Kingdoms, Tomb Kings, Vampire Counts, and Warriors of Chaos. And so, talking about each one of them, the Dark Elf army had a unit of 20 Witches, 20 Executioners, some Dread Spears, a Bolt Thrower, and a couple of units of Dark Shards, along with some Hags and a Sorceress in there, and that was pretty much the army for the Dark Elves. Oh, and some Doomfire Warlocks. We then had the Ogre Kingdom army, which had 2 units of Bulls, some Rhinox Riders, and then a Slaughtermaster, some Iron Guts, an Iron Blaster, and I believe that was it. A couple of unit Bulls. And a couple of the Frost Sabers, singular Frost Sabers as well. We then had Tomb King's army, had a big block of archers. This was the Tomb King's army I mentioned my friend Kron playing against the other day. Tomb King in a unit of Tomb Guard to make them weapon skill 10, with the Fencer's Blades and all of that. Casket of Souls, Catapult, Bone Giant, unit of Chariots, unit of Skeleton Horse Archers. We then had Vampire Counts army, and I didn't get an awfully good look at the Vampire Counts army. I saw some Ghouls, saw some Graveguard, some Black Knights, and some Ghosty Boys. And then a Warriors of Chaos army that was Khorne, so a unit of Juggernauts with a Juggernaut Lord in there. And then 3 blobs of Chaos Warriors, a Chaos Chariot rounding it out. And then, of course, you had my Wood Elf army, which we will talk about now. And so, this was my Wood Elf army. If you'd like a full breakdown of the army list, you can go check out the video we posted the other day saying I'm going to a Warhammer Fantasy tournament. But this is the list. This is everything that was in it. So I had a blob of 20-something Eternal Guard. I would stick the Beast's Wizard in there, and then a BSB with a Hail of Doom arrow. I would then have 2 units of 10 Glade Guard that had True Flight arrows, and Spell Singers, 1 of Life with Kalangor Stave, and 1 of Shadow with a Dispel Scroll. 10 War Dancers, 10 Way Watchers, 3 Truekin, 3 Warhawk Riders, and that rounded out the army for me. I also had the Acorn of Ages on my Wizard Lord as well for those extra forests across the table, which came in handy a lot throughout the games, as we'll get chatting about right now. Alright, and so here was the first game. We were playing Battleline straight up, which, as we talked about, is literally just line your troops up and go play a game of Warhammer. It's a fun scenario and was really good for all of us to sort of just get back into the groove. Now, I got a good roll to start the game off here, and I got all 3 of my acorn forests out, so we just dropped down all the forests across the table. And then we proceeded to finish deploying first. I got to go first with all the stuff, and so we started doing the business. So we moved up into the center of the board and sort of baiting in the Dark Elves, and then we popped off some pot shots, and we actually got the bolt thrower and took that off turn 1, which was massive for us. The Dark Elves were casting up around their bolt thrower, and what this meant is he no longer outranged me. He no longer had that big artillery piece I had to go and get rid of. And so it forced him to have to break his lines, and I was at this point in turn 2 sitting in my forest. He came into me, so played himself a little cautiously. The Warhawks and the Waywatchers over on his flank were just causing him all sorts of problems. Having to have a whole unit of Dread Spears just run around and try and catch units flapping around on his flank. His Doomfire Warlocks were trying to come down and run. Probably one big thing about this game that stood out more than any is we had absolutely terrible magic phases, both of us. We both rolled absolutely nothing. I think all game we had 2 rolls over 5s, 1 each. My first one and his last one. So at that point, I was too far away to do anything, and the one where he got like 9 or 10 dice, he had like nothing left. So he came up to the tree line, and he actually opened up. I had the Shield of Thorns off on my Treekin and actually charged them out. And they smacked into his Dread Spears and did a lot of damage to them. Shield of Thorns also just went nuts, taking out a ton. I was picking off with a Hail of Doom Arrow. I think I killed 6 or 7 of the Executioners with a Hail of Doom Arrow. I was wrecking them. And then the Waywatchers were just causing him all sorts of problems on the flank. They actually ended up charging his archers and running him down. And as the game sort of wore on, he got his Executioners into the flank of my Treekin and failed to kill them. So the Eternal Guard, you can see there on the right, actually end up charging those Executioners on the flank and really hammering home. They had Whiston's Wild Form on them, so they were Strength 4, Armor Piercing, and they just came in and absolutely wrecked those Executioners. The War Dancers went into the side of the Witch Elf bus on the left-hand side near the pillar you can see there now. The War Dancers went in, and my champion actually killed his hag in the unit with 2 Killing Blow hits from using the dance for Killing Blow. However, the War Dancer, in typical Dark Elf fashion, she got through 1 poison attack as we struck at the same time, and ended up killing her. His Doomfire Warlocks came around and eventually just got whittled down. They actually took, I think, 2 or 3 turns to get through a unit of Glade Guard, as they just kept passing the leadership tests. And at this point, his Doomfire Warlocks eventually got taken off by the other unit of Glade Guard behind. His Witch Elves were murdered down. The Dread Spears and all of that were ran down. And effectively, at the end of the game, he had a unit of Dread Spears that had just been charged by the Eternal Guard, the Treekin, and the Waywatchers and everything. And so at that point, we just called the game. And that was bottom of 5, I think. And so a major victory to the Wood Elves in game 1. Ended up, I would have tailed him had we not just called it a 5. We knew what was happening. That was game. So first up, a victory to the Wood Elves. And so game 2, I was pitted against some Warriors of Chaos, some Cornate Warriors of Chaos. We were playing the scenario Dawn Attack. This is where you roll off to see where your units sort of deploy down your battle line. And we both rolled pretty well, with actually most of our forces going in the center, and we both had a unit off to the left. So how this game sort of went, he had the first turn, sort of moved up a little bit. I then cautiously sort of moved up and just sort of focused playing around with that sort of giant piece of terrain in the center and all the stuff that had happened. But it was a little bit interesting on sort of like the first sort of movement parts. My first turn, I hammered home a ton of shooting into the right-hand Chaos Warrior units. I hadn't deployed when I took this picture my infiltrators down, or scouts, sorry. And they were my Waywatchers there, and just hammered home. And that right unit of Chaos Warriors actually fled on the first turn. They broke from panic, and then actually failed to rally and ran again, and then in my second turn, the Way Watchers actually charged them, made the charge, at which point they had to flee again, and they actually ran off the board, so I'd run a whole unit off the board. However, on the left-hand flank, my unit Archers, you can see that on the left, got absolutely minced by the Chaos Warriors that came down. However, I did manage to do a wound to his Wizard Hero. I'm not sure how. I think I did it in combat. And then later that Wizard Hero would actually miscast and kill himself. In the center, the Treekin held up the Juggernauts and the Chariot for a turn. Meanwhile, the Eternal Guard sort of fought off the other Chaos Warriors and actually beat them and then sort of moved back. The War Dancers were made pretty short work of, eventually sort of going down to the Chaos Warriors and all of that. The Warhawks were made pretty short work, but they did their job holding up the Chariot for another turn. The Juggernauts came down and actually ended up charging my Eternal Guard, who by this point had come back from the center and were down in the middle of the table. And they actually died. The Juggernauts failed a test with the Eternal Guard, and the Eternal Guard actually ran them down, beating them in combat by 2 thanks to a banner and a BSB, and then because they lose all of that, they fled and they got chased down, and the Eternal Guard wiped them. And massively swung the game in the favor of the Wood Elves in this one. A really important leadership test failed and just completely capitulated from there. From there, he had just his warriors on the flank, and I had the full Eternal Guard bus. I managed to, in this game, I had the last turn. So at that point, I realized I was up at points, and I'm like, well, I'm just not going to fight you and risk anything. And I won the game at that point, thanks to having the Eternal Guard and the Way Watchers still alive, versus his Chaos Warriors and a Chariot. So another win for the Wood Elves on this one. And so, game 3, I was playing against Ogre Kingdoms in Battle for the Past. This scenario really was good for me. It meant when I rolled the 3 for my forest, I was able to really sort of just dictate the battlefield and plonk down a ton of forests onto the table. And then we went about putting down our army. So I purposely deployed a false flank on one side of the table, just sort of knowing that I didn't want to fight the entire ogre force en masse, otherwise it would end very badly for me. So I put my Treekin and Eternal Guard on one hard flank where terrain was definitely denser, and then sort of put stuff center on the other flank, so just on the other flank but towards the center. And with my first turn, I just sort of moved across. And my first turn was amazing in this one. The Way Watchers managed to roll 7 6s to wound on their shot against an Iron Blaster, and it failed its saves and killed it turn 1. 7 6s on their wounding rolls, and they just obliterated an Iron Blaster. Meanwhile, the Glade Guard down on my bottom left flank managed to kill a Lead Belcher who panicked them. The Lead Belchers then ran, so did the Frost Saber next to them, and then the Ogre Bulls as well fled as well. So that entire flank, from just a couple of models dying, absolutely panicked and ran. And those Bulls, those Lead Belchers, and the Frost Saber all would run off the table without ever actually doing anything. They rallied a couple of times, but were once again shot and then fled once more later in the game. So that entire flank crumbled under just a couple of shooting units. This allowed me to focus my attention and whittle down his other bull unit to next to nothing, and just take the brunt of his force. And while he would eventually get both the Treekin and the Eternal Guard, the rest of my force would do enough damage to put me up on points late game, where he was down in my deployment zone with his sort of hammer units and stuck behind a building that you can see there at the top of the table, and just not able to get out. So in the last turns, I just ran my forces away, knowing I was up on points, and just peppered him with shots, and that was game. This one really came down to the fact he failed some critical rolls, and I rolled really hot when I needed to. The Way Watchers were absolute MVPs in this. They obliterated, along with those 10 Glade Guard, an entire flank. And the Eternal Guard did pretty well themselves, like really forcing the Ogres to have to go through them the hard way. But yeah, it was all down to those Way Watchers in this, who throughout the entire event were my MVP, I think. They did so much work, whether it was chasing down wizards, shooting off cannons turn 1, making his Juggernaut Lord realize that you can't come touch me, otherwise I'll kill you. The Waywatchers by far were the best unit in the army. But this was a really cool event. This was my 3rd win, so I went 3-0. I was the only one on 3 wins. I'd beaten the next 3 people in the podiums, and so won myself a cool little prize money, which I got some Song of Ice and Fire minis with, which I'm really excited to try that, but that's a different story. That is the tournament report. This was a load of fun, and I can't wait to play some more Warhammer Fantasy. It definitely scratches a very different itch to Age of Sigmar and other games. I have so much nostalgia with this game. Really, really enjoyed my time. Looking forward to playing some more. If you'd like to see more Warhammer Fantasy content on the channel, let us know in the comments below what you would like to see. Well, that's the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you have not already. And also, why not drop us a comment below and let us know what you enjoyed about the video. If you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of our little community here at Cinderful Gaming, you can do so by following the link in the video's description to our Discord server. Also, if you'd like to help support the channel more and in another way, you can do so either by supporting on Patreon or YouTube members. You can do either of these by following the links in the video's description, and as a special thing for everyone who does, we'd like to give a shout out first of all to our Patreons: Christian Weir, James Soren, Greenskins Gaming, AJC, Kenny Lowell, Outer and Shop First, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, The Rising Ape, Q Dynamic, Agu, Anthony B, Anton Nilsson, JJ Austrian, Average Wargamer, Domer, Mark Harvey, James Cater, and Samuel. And a special shout out as well to our YouTube members: Greenrich Gaming, Kenton Young, Chris Wallace, Ronya, Vinny, Lockloric, The Johnny84, David Ellsworth, Revenar, Wolfric Nick, Broken Chef, and Sean Scott. Lastly, a special thank you to, first of all, Lady Watchfox Art, who does all the amazing artwork for the channel you can see here, and to Xmorphic, who does all the amazing background work for our Discord server, making sure it all works nice and properly over there. Thank you all for watching once again, everyone. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the grey. Ciao for now.